Blood of Jesus Christ save me. Mother-in-law, you are a witch.
The morning was bright, and the air smelled of joy. Birds sang on the mango trees as Ada danced in her white gown. Her smile could melt any heart. Today was her wedding day, the day she had prayed for all her life. People filled the compound, clapping, dancing, and spraying money as the drums beat loudly. Ada's husband, David, couldn't stop smiling. He held her hand and said softly, "You are my blessing, Ada. I will love you till my last breath." Ada blushed and looked away shyly. "And I will never stop loving you too," she said. But as the crowd laughed and cheered, one person stood at the corner, watching quietly, David's mother, Mama Rose. She was dressed in a long red lace and gold head tie. Her face looked calm, but her heart burned with something only she knew. Mama Rose forced a smile as people greeted her, but inside, she was boiling. "How dare this small girl take my son from me?" she whispered under her breath. "He no longer listens to me, all because of her." When Ada knelt down after the ceremony to greet her mother-in-law, Mama Rose placed a hand on Ada's head and said, "You are welcome, my daughter. May your marriage be unforgettable." Her voice sounded sweet, but the last word rolled out slowly, almost like a warning. Ada didn't notice. She smiled and said, "Thank you, Mama." That night, after all the guests had gone, the new couple went into their room, laughing and talking about their future. They didn't know that Mama Rose was not sleeping. When the house became quiet, she slowly opened her door and walked toward Ada and David's room. She looked around, making sure no one was awake. Then she brought out a small black cloth from her wrapper. Inside it was something that looked like dry leaves mixed with red powder. She bent down and gently lifted the pillow on Ada's side of the bed. "Sleep well, my daughter," she whispered. "Let's see how long your joy will last." She placed the charm under the pillow, blew out a long breath, and walked back to her room with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The night suddenly became windy. The curtains moved even though the windows were closed. Ada, in her sleep, began to sweat. She turned and turned, breathing fast. Her body felt heavy, and in her dream, she saw a woman standing in the dark, laughing softly. When morning came, Ada woke up feeling weak and dizzy. Her head pounded, and her body felt strange. David rushed to her side. "My love, are you okay?" he asked, touching her forehead. "I don't know," Ada whispered. "I feel cold inside." Mama Rose walked in just then, holding a tray of breakfast. "Oh dear, she's already falling sick," she said with a smile that didn't look worried. "Maybe it's just the stress of the wedding. She will be fine." But Ada wasn't fine. That was only the beginning. Something had entered her home that night. Something she could not see. And before long, her happy marriage would turn into a battle she never imagined. Days turned into weeks, and Ada's joy began to fade little by little. She no longer laughed the way she used to. Her eyes looked tired, and her body grew weaker every day. David did everything to make her happy. He bought her fruits, cooked for her, and even sang to her when she couldn't sleep. But nothing changed. One night, Ada woke up suddenly. She heard footsteps in the sitting room. It sounded slow and heavy, like someone dragging their feet across the floor. She looked at David beside her. He was fast asleep. Ada slowly got up, opened the door, and peeped into the hallway. The lights were off, but at the end of the corridor, she saw a shadow moving. It was a woman's shape, tall and bent forward, wearing a wrapper around her chest. Ada's heart started beating fast. She tried to speak but her voice failed her. The shadow stopped, turned slowly, and faced her. The only thing Ada saw was a pair of shining eyes staring straight at her. She screamed. David woke up at once and rushed out. "Ada. What is it?" he shouted, switching on the light. But the corridor was empty. The shadow was gone. There was someone there. Ada said, shaking. "I saw her, David. A woman was walking in the dark." David held her tight. "Maybe you were dreaming, my love. You need to rest." But deep down, Ada knew she wasn't dreaming. That thing she saw, it felt real. The next morning, Mama Rose came into their room, pretending to be worried. I heard your scream last night, she said. Hope you didn't see a spirit. Ada looked at her closely, but the old woman's face showed no fear, only a strange calmness. I don't know, Ada replied softly. Mama Rose smiled. Don't worry. You'll be fine. She placed a hand on Ada's shoulder for a moment, and Ada suddenly felt weak again. Later that week, Ada fainted while cooking. David carried her to the hospital, but the doctor said everything was normal. There's nothing wrong with her body, the doctor said. Maybe it's stress. But how could it be stress when every night Ada saw the same thing, a woman standing in the dark, whispering her name? Sometimes she would wake up and find ashes under her bed. Sometimes, the food she cooked would spoil before they even ate it. One evening, her best friend, Linda, came to visit. Linda was a bold girl who spoke her mind. When she saw how pale Ada looked, she said, something is not right here. This house feels strange. Ada nodded. I feel like someone doesn't want me here. Linda decided to stay the night to keep her company. That was the night everything changed. At midnight, when everyone was supposed to be asleep, Linda had movement in the sitting room. She quietly picked up her phone and tiptoed to the door. When she peeped through the small opening, her eyes widened. There, in the middle of the room, was Mama Rose. She was kneeling on the floor, holding a small clay pot filled with burning powder. She was whispering strange words, and in front of her lay a photo of Ada, half burnt, with red palm oil dripping on it. Linda gasped and quickly covered her mouth. She recorded everything with her phone, her hands shaking. The next morning, she woke Ada up and showed her the video. Ada's heart broke. She couldn't believe what she saw. The woman she respected and called Mama was the one behind all her pain. It's Mama, Ada whispered, her voice shaking. Linda recorded her last night while she was doing something evil. David, I think she's the reason for everything happening to us. David's face changed. He stood up quickly. Stop it. Don't talk about my mother like that. But it's true. Ada cried. You saw it yourself. David threw the phone on the bed. Maybe you planned this with Linda just to make my mother look bad. I know my mother. She would never do such a thing. Ada held his hand, tears rolling down her face. Please, believe me, David. I am not lying. David pulled away from her touch. Enough, Ada. I don't want to hear another word. He walked out of the room angrily. From the doorway, Mama Rose stood quietly, pretending not to know what was happening. But the small smile on her face said it all. She had heard every word. That evening, David refused to eat. He barely looked at Ada. The silence between them grew heavy. Mama Rose walked into their room with a bowl of soup. My son, she said softly, don't let this woman destroy our family. She's under a bad spirit's influence. You need to pray for her. David sighed. Mama, she's changing. I don't know what to do anymore. Mama Rose touched his shoulder. Don't worry, my child. Leave her to me. I will handle it. When she left the room, she went straight to the backyard. She opened a small clay pot hidden under the ground. Inside it was Ada's wedding ring and a piece of her hair. Mama Rose whispered coldly, you want to fight me, Ada? Let's see if your tears can save you now. That night, Ada woke up again, sweating, shaking. She felt something pressing her chest. She couldn't move or breathe. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. It felt like invisible hands were holding her down. In her struggle, she saw a dark shadow standing near the bed. The shadow slowly took the shape of Mama Rose, smiling wickedly. Then everything went dark. The next morning, Ada woke up on the floor. David was standing over her, looking worried but angry. Ada, what's going on with you? He shouted. Every night it's one story or the other. You scream, you faint, you see things, what's happening to you? Ada tried to speak, but her voice was weak. She's the one doing this to me. David looked at her sadly. You're losing your mind, Ada. My mother is a prayerful woman. She fasts every week for us. Ada felt a cold tear run down her cheek. You'll see the truth one day, David. I just pray it won't be too late. Later that day, Linda came again to check on her friend. But when Mama Rose saw her, she frowned deeply. You again, she said. You are the reason there's no peace in this house. Linda smiled slightly. If peace means keeping quiet while you destroy people's lives, then I'm happy to bring war. Mama Rose's eyes darkened. Be careful, girl. You are playing with fire. Linda looked her in the eyes. I'm not afraid of darkness, Mama Rose. God is bigger than your charms. Mama Rose hissed and walked away, but her face changed. For the first time, she looked worried. That night, she decided it was time to finish what she started. The night was cold and silent. The wind blew softly through the windows, making the curtains dance like ghosts. Ada lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Sleep refused to come. She could still feel the heaviness on her chest, the same weight that visited her every night. Her body was weak, but her spirit had grown stronger. She was tired of being afraid. She knelt beside her bed and whispered a quiet prayer. God, please fight for me. I don't know what to do anymore. Outside the room, Mama Rose stood at her window, watching the moon. Her eyes were dark and cold. She held a small black calabash in her hands. It's time, she said softly. Time to end this once and for all. She began to chant strange words, her voice mixing with the sound of the night breeze. The candle beside her flickered, and the air became heavy. Suddenly, the flame burst, and a wave of heat filled the room. Mama Rose screamed and dropped the calabash. Smoke rose from the floor, forming into a dark figure that stared back at her. Her hands began to shake. No, this can't be happening, she cried. The voice from the smoke laughed. You were warned not to touch the innocent. Now your own hands will bear the fire. Mama Rose screamed again and fell backward, knocking over a chair. David, who was in his room, heard the noise and ran to her door. Mama. What's going on? He shouted, forcing the door open. He found her on the floor, shaking, sweat pouring down her face. The air smelled strange, like burnt herbs. Mama. What happened? She looked up at him, her eyes wide with fear. Nothing, my son. I just fell. David frowned. He helped her up, but something felt wrong. Her skin was hot, and her voice trembled. That night, David couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about how his mother looked, frightened, weak, almost guilty. Early the next morning, he decided to check the backyard. As he walked around, he noticed a patch of ground that looked freshly dug. He knelt down and started to dig with his hands. After a few minutes, he found a small clay pot covered with red cloth. When he opened it, he froze. Inside were Ada's wedding ring, a lock of her hair, and a photo with strange marks drawn across her face. David's heart dropped. He stood up slowly, his hands shaking. What is this? He turned toward the house, his chest tight with anger and confusion. Meanwhile, Ada sat inside, trying to eat a little breakfast. Mama Rose walked in quietly, holding a cup of tea. My daughter, she said gently, drink this. It will make you feel better. Ada looked at the tea and then at her mother-in-law's face. Something inside her said no. I'm not thirsty, Mama, she replied softly. Mama Rose forced a smile. Drink it, dear. You'll get stronger. Before Ada could answer, David's voice thundered from the doorway. Mama. Both women turned. David was holding the clay pot in his hand. What is this? He shouted. I found it buried behind the house. Mama Rose's face turned pale. Who told you to touch that? She snapped. So it's true, David said, his voice breaking. Everything Ada said, it's true. Ada covered her mouth in shock. Tears filled her eyes. Mama, why? David cried. What did she ever do to you? Mama Rose's lips trembled. She tried to speak, but no words came out. Her hands began to shake again. Suddenly, she screamed and fell to the ground, her body twisting in pain. Ada and David rushed to her, but when they tried to touch her, she pushed them away. "Don't touch me," she shouted. "It's too late." The lights in the house flickered. The air grew cold. A deep voice echoed faintly, one only she could hear. "Your time has come." Mama Rose cried loudly, crawling toward the door, but fell again. "Forgive me," she screamed. "Forgive me." David held his wife tightly. "What's happening?" Ada could barely speak. "I think our power is turning against her." And then, silence. Only the sound of the wind outside. Mama Rose lay on the floor, breathing hard. Her wrapper was half loosened, her hands trembling. The once confident woman now looked like a shadow of herself. Ada stood in one corner, her eyes wide with fear, holding on to David's arm. The house felt heavy, like the air itself was watching. "Mama," David whispered, "please, talk to me." But Mama Rose only shook her head slowly. "You don't understand," she said in a broken voice. "They warned me long ago, never to use this power for evil. But jealousy blinded me." Ada's heart softened. Tears rolled down her face. "Mama, I never wanted to take your son away. I only wanted to love him." Mama Rose looked up at her, her eyes full of pain. "You were too kind, Ada. That's what made me hate you more. Every time I saw your smile, I remembered how cruel life had been to me." Her voice cracked. "When my husband died, David was all I had. I couldn't imagine another woman taking him from me. So I went back to what I had left behind, the spirits my mother once served." She began to cry, loud and deep. "I thought I could control them, but now they control me." Suddenly, a cold wind blew through the house, making the door slam. The light bulb above them flickered again. David shouted, "Mama, what's happening?" Mama Rose fell to her knees. "They've come for me," she whispered. "I tried to stop, but it's too late." Ada ran forward. "No. There's still time. You can pray. You can ask for mercy." Mama Rose grabbed Ada's hand tightly. Her grip was weak, but her eyes were desperate. "Will God still forgive me after everything I've done?" Ada nodded through her tears. "Yes, Mama. He will. But you must let go of the darkness." Mama Rose closed her eyes, her lips moving silently. David knelt beside her, holding her other hand. For the first time in many years, they all prayed together. The house grew quiet again. The flickering stopped. The air felt lighter. But before anyone could speak, Mama Rose suddenly gasped. Her eyes opened wide as if she saw something no one else could. "Light," she whispered. "So bright." Then she fell still. David shook her gently. "Mama. Mama." But she didn't answer. Ada covered her mouth, her heart pounding. The wind outside slowly calmed. For a long moment, no one spoke. Only silence filled the room. Then Ada looked at her husband and said softly, "David, the battle is over, but the scars will remain." David held her close, tears streaming down his face. "I was blind, Ada. I didn't believe you. I'm so sorry." Ada rested her head on his shoulder. "It's not your fault. Darkness hides behind love sometimes." They sat there together, holding each other tightly as the sun slowly rose through the window, washing the room in golden light. But somewhere outside, near the old mango tree, the soil began to move, slowly, quietly, as if something was not fully gone. And that was only the beginning. 3 weeks had passed since that dreadful night. The house that once echoed with cries and prayers was now calm again. The air smelled of peace, but also of memories that refused to fade. Ada sat on the veranda, staring at the morning sun. The birds were singing again, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a little hope in her heart. David came out quietly and sat beside her. He looked tired but gentle, holding a cup of tea in his hand. Have you slept at all? He asked softly. Ada smiled faintly. Not really. Sometimes I still hear her voice calling me in my dreams. David looked down. Me too. He sighed deeply. I buried her beside the old mango tree, just like she always wanted. I still can't believe she's gone. Ada touched his hand gently. She's at peace now. I believe God has forgiven her. David nodded slowly, though his eyes glistened with tears. I just wish I had listened to you earlier. Maybe things would have been different. Ada shook her head. Don't blame yourself. Evil hides behind love sometimes. None of us saw it coming. For a moment, silence filled the air. The wind blew softly, carrying the scent of fresh leaves. Then Ada stood up. I want to go and clean her grave, she said. It's the least I can do. They walked together to the backyard. The mango tree stood tall, its leaves dancing gently in the wind. Beneath it was a small mound of soil covered with flowers Ada had planted. She knelt down and began to clean the edges of the grave, brushing away dry leaves. As she did, a tiny butterfly landed on her hand. Ada smiled. Maybe that's her spirit saying thank you, she said quietly. David nodded. She always loved butterflies. They stayed there for a while, not speaking, just listening to the wind and the sound of life returning to their home. But as they turned to go back inside, Ada stopped suddenly. She looked back at the mango tree. David, she whispered, did you hear that? David frowned. Hear what? Ada stared at the tree. The wind had stopped, yet one branch kept shaking. From somewhere deep under the soil came a faint sound, a whisper, soft but clear. Forgive me. Ada froze. Her heart raced. David, did you hear that? He turned quickly, listening. The sound stopped. The air became still again. David shook his head slowly. Maybe it's just the wind, he said. But his voice trembled. Ada didn't speak again. She looked at the grave one last time and whispered, Rest, Mama. Please rest. As they walked back toward the house, the camera could have shown the butterfly still sitting on the grave, its wings glowing softly under the sunlight. But just as it flew away, the soil beneath the flowers moved again, very slowly, like something breathing underneath. Ada stood frozen, her hands shaking. Then she whispered, Mama. Silence. She turned slowly and walked out of the kitchen, her heart beat loud in her ears. That night, she didn't tell David what she heard. She didn't want him to think she was imagining things. But as she lay in bed, she couldn't sleep. The memory of that humming stayed in her mind like a shadow. The next day, she noticed something else. The flowers Ada planted on Mama Rose's grave had all withered, every single one except one red rose in the middle that looked fresh and alive. Ada frowned. How can one flower survive while others died? She whispered. That night, the strange things grew stronger. Ada was in the bathroom washing her face when she saw a shadow move behind her in the mirror, just for a second. She turned quickly. No one. Her heart beat fast. Maybe I'm just tired, she said to herself, forcing a smile. But deep down, fear began to crawl back into her chest. Later that week, David fell ill. He started complaining of cold and headache. Then he began to mumble strange things in his sleep, calling his mother's name over and over. Mama. Mama, please don't go. I am sorry. Ada would hold his hand and whisper, Wake up, my love, it's just a dream. But it wasn't just a dream. Each time he woke up, there were scratch marks on his arms, long and thin, as if someone had dragged nails across his skin. Ada began to cry every night. She prayed. She sprinkled holy water around the room. She even called the pastor again, but the pastor said softly, Ada, sometimes spirits don't rest because of guilt. You must forgive her completely before peace can come. Ada nodded slowly, tears rolling down her cheeks. But I already forgave her, she whispered. The pastor looked at her gently. Then maybe, she hasn't forgiven herself. That night, Ada sat alone beside the window. The moonlight filled the room. The air was quiet. Then she heard it again, the humming. Soft. Sad. Closer this time. Her hands trembled. She looked toward the door, and for a brief second, she saw her. Mama Rose, standing by the doorway, dressed in white, her face pale but calm. Ada gasped, her voice shaking. Mama. The figure didn't move. She only whispered, "Protect my son." Before Ada could say another word, the light flickered, and she disappeared. Ada fell to her knees, crying. What do you mean? Protect him from who? But there was no answer, only silence and the sound of the night wind whispering softly through the window. The night after Ada saw Mama Rose's ghost, she couldn't sleep. Her heart beat fast, her eyes wide open. Those 3 words kept echoing in her head, protect my son. Protect him from who? From what? David had grown weaker. He barely ate. He slept most of the day, and every time he closed his eyes, he mumbled strange things. Sometimes, his body shook like he was fighting something invisible. Ada sat beside him, holding his hand. You'll be fine, my love, she whispered, wiping his sweat with a cloth. But deep inside, fear gripped her heart. Something unseen was feeding on him, and she didn't know how to stop it. That night, she dreamt again. In her dream, Mama Rose appeared, this time looking younger and calm, wearing a long white gown. Her eyes were sad. Ada, she said softly. Forgive me for all I did. I thought I was protecting my son, but I opened a door that I cannot close. Ada's voice shook. What door, Mama? What did you do? Mama Rose looked down. When David was born, I went to a woman, a seer. She told me that a dark spirit wanted to take his life before he turned 30. I was desperate, so I made a covenant to protect him. Ada's heart pounded. A covenant. Mama Rose nodded. Yes. I promised to give something precious in return, my peace after death. Ada covered her mouth, her eyes wide. You sold your peace to save him. Tears rolled down Mama Rose's face. I didn't know it would haunt him after I'm gone. That spirit is still hungry, Ada. It wants to finish what it started. Ada began to cry. Then tell me how to stop it, Mama. Please. Mama Rose reached out her hand, her voice trembling. Go to the old shrine near the river. The woman who lives there knows how to break it. But hurry, once the full moon rises, it may be too late. Ada tried to grab her hand, but the dream began to fade. Mama. Wait, please don't leave. But it was too late. The vision disappeared, and Ada woke up screaming. David sat up beside her, breathing heavily. Ada, what's wrong? Ada hugged him tightly, crying. It's Mama, she came again. She told me something terrible. David looked confused and weak. What did she say? Ada swallowed hard. She said you're in danger. She made a covenant before you were born, and now something is coming for you. David froze. His face turned pale. A covenant, he whispered. Ada nodded. We must go to the river. There's someone there who can help. David shook his head weakly. Ada, I don't believe in all that again. Please. But before he could finish, the lights flickered. The windows rattled. The air turned cold. Then the door to their room creaked open, slowly, though no one was there. David held Ada's hand tightly, his breathing heavy. Ada, something is here. The wind blew fiercely through the room. The mirror cracked. The candlelight went out. And from the corner of the dark room, a deep, chilling voice whispered, not Mama Rose's this time, but something darker. She broke her promise, now it's his turn. Ada screamed. David fell to the ground, shaking violently. She ran to him, holding him tightly, crying. Please. Leave him alone. Take me instead. The voice laughed coldly, echoing through the walls, then faded into silence. Ada sobbed uncontrollably, her tears falling on David's still face. Mama, she whispered, trembling, you said to protect your son, but how? Outside, the moon rose full and red over the night sky, just as the warning had said. The next morning came with heavy clouds. The sun hid behind the grey sky, and the wind carried a strange chill that made Ada shiver. David was still lying weakly on the bed. His skin looked pale, his lips dry. He barely moved, only whispered her name sometimes in his sleep. Ada knelt beside him, tears in her eyes. Hold on for me, please, she whispered. I'll bring help. She covered him with a blanket, kissed his forehead, and hurried out of the house. She carried only a small bag, a bottle of water, and a cross around her neck. The road to the river was long and lonely. Birds had stopped singing. Even the trees seemed to whisper as the wind passed through their leaves. Ada kept walking, praying under her breath. God, give me strength. Don't let me lose him. When she reached the riverbank, the air smelled strange, like smoke and rain mixed together. An old woman sat near the water, her back bent, her eyes hidden under a scarf. A small fire burned beside her, and white smoke curled into the sky. Ada stopped, breathing hard. Mama, are you the one who lives here? The old woman turned slowly, her eyes sharp but calm. I have been waiting for you, Ada. Ada froze. You know my name? The old woman nodded. Your mother-in-law told me you would come. Ada's eyes widened. You knew her? I did. She came here many years ago, the woman said, staring into the fire. She made a vow to protect her son from the shadow that wanted him. But the price was her peace, and now the spirit has come to collect what remains. Ada's voice trembled. How can I stop it? The old woman threw a handful of herbs into the fire. The flames turned blue. The bond was sealed with blood. It can only be broken with blood, not death, but sacrifice. Ada's heart beat fast. Sacrifice. What kind? The woman looked up, her eyes glowing softly. You must give something pure, something the spirit cannot touch, your tears, your faith, your promise to protect his soul, no matter the cost. Ada swallowed hard. I'll do anything. The woman nodded slowly. Then kneel. Ada knelt by the fire, tears rolling down her cheeks. The woman dipped her fingers in the river and touched Ada's forehead. Say his name. David, Ada whispered. Say what you offer. I offer my love, Ada cried. My faith, my tears, and my heart, so he can live. The fire roared suddenly, brighter than before. The ground shook slightly. The river began to move as if alive. The woman's voice grew stronger. Spirit of the shadow, your claim is broken. You fed on fear and pain, but now love has taken your power. A loud cry echoed from the air, deep, angry, echoing across the water. The flames flickered wildly. Ada closed her eyes, trembling. Please, let him go. The fire went out suddenly. The wind stopped. Silence fell. When Ada opened her eyes, the old woman was gone. Only the smoke remained, rising slowly into the grey sky. Ada looked around in confusion. Mama. Where are you? Then she heard a gentle voice behind her, Mama Rose's voice. Thank you, Ada. Ada turned quickly, but saw only the river reflecting the sky. Tears filled her eyes. Is it over? She whispered. And from somewhere deep inside her heart, she felt a peace she hadn't felt in a long time. But just as she turned to leave, a cold breeze passed over the river, and in its reflection, she saw not her own face, but David's, pale and still. Her heart dropped. No. She ran as fast as she could toward home, the sky rumbling above her, lightning flashing across the clouds. The full moon had risen. The spirit's time had come. Rain poured heavily that night. Thunder rolled across the sky, flashing through the darkness like angry fire. Ada ran barefoot through the muddy road, clutching her soaked bag to her chest. Her heart beat fast, her tears mixing with the rain. Please, God, don't take him from me, not now, she cried. By the time she reached the house, the front door was wide open. Lightning flashed, revealing the sitting room in a mess, chairs fallen, pictures broken on the floor. David, she screamed, her voice trembling. David, where are you? No answer. Only the sound of rain and wind howling through the windows. She ran into their bedroom and froze. David was lying on the floor, his eyes half open, whispering something she couldn't hear. His skin was cold, his lips pale. Ada dropped to her knees beside him. David. It's me. Wake up. He looked at her weakly and whispered, he's here. Then the candles in the room flickered, and went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Ada held David tightly, shaking. Leave us alone, she screamed into the air. You've taken enough. Then, from the corner of the room, a dark shadow began to move, slowly at first, then closer. Its shape was not human. Its eyes burned red like fire. A deep, heavy voice filled the room. She broke the covenant, now his soul is mine. Ada stood up, trembling but strong. You can't take him. The bond is broken. The spirit laughed, a sound that made the walls shake. Her tears could not wash the blood that binds him. You cannot save him. Ada raised her hands, her eyes filled with tears. I can't, because love is stronger than darkness. The shadow screamed angrily. The windows shattered. The room shook violently. David gasped in pain, clutching his chest. Ada, run. But Ada knelt beside him, crying. No. I won't leave you. I made a promise, David. I stay with you, no matter what. The spirit hissed and stretched toward her, the air turning cold like ice. Ada held David's hand and began to pray aloud, her voice breaking. God of mercy, God of light, please don't let this darkness win. Let your light fill this house. Let your angels fight for us. The spirit screamed again, louder this time, its form twisting and shaking. A bright light filled the room, bursting from Ada's hands, covering David like a shield. The shadow tried to fight, but the light grew stronger, brighter, until the room shone like day. Then, suddenly, the spirit let out one last cry and vanished. Silence. The rain stopped. The candles lit themselves again, flickering softly. Ada looked down, but David was still, eyes closed, not moving. Her voice broke. David, please wake up, please. She laid her head on his chest, crying. Don't leave me, please don't leave me alone. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then she felt it, a heartbeat. Slow, but real. David groaned softly, his eyes opening. Ada. Ada gasped, looking up. You're alive. He smiled weakly. You saved me. She hugged him tightly, crying hard. No, love saved you. They sat there on the floor, holding each other as dawn slowly broke through the window. The house was quiet again. Peaceful. But outside, under the mango tree where Mama Rose was buried, the soil moved slightly, as if something deep below had finally gone still. And for the first time, the red rose that never withered began to bloom brighter, shining under the morning sun. Morning sunlight crept gently through the window, painting the walls with gold. For the first time in many nights, the house was calm. No whispers. No shadows. Only the sound of birds greeting a new day. Ada sat beside David's bed, watching him sleep peacefully. His breathing was slow but steady, his face calm like a child's. She smiled through her tears. Thank you, God, she whispered. When David woke up, he reached for her hand. Is it over? Ada nodded. Yes. The darkness is gone. He looked around the room, then at her. I saw her, Ada. Mama. She smiled at me before the light came. She said she can finally rest. Ada's eyes filled with tears again. She loved you so much, David. Even in her mistakes, everything she did was for you. David nodded slowly. And you saved me, Ada. You fought for me when even I gave up. Ada placed his hand on her chest. Love always fights. Days passed. David grew stronger, laughing again, eating again. Their little boy ran around the house, playing without fear. Life returned, soft, warm, and full of peace. One evening, Ada went out to the mango tree where Mama Rose was buried. The sunset painted the sky orange and pink. She knelt beside the grave, touching the red rose that now bloomed proudly. "Thank you, Mama," she said softly. "I kept your son safe, just like you asked." A gentle breeze blew, and she felt a warmth on her face, like a mother's hand brushing away tears. Ada smiled. "Rest well. You're forgiven?" She stood there for a while, listening to the wind through the leaves. Then she whispered one last prayer, not of fear, but of gratitude. As she walked back to the house, her son ran to her and hugged her legs. "Mommy, look. The moon is smiling tonight." Ada looked up at the sky. The moon shone softly, surrounded by stars. She smiled too. "Yes, my child, it's smiling because peace has come." The camera could fade on their small family standing under the moonlight, the house glowing warmly behind them, the night calm, and the red rose swaying gently under the tree. And somewhere deep in the wind, Mama Rose's voice could be heard one last time, calm and full of love. "Thank you, my daughter."